The Man from Toronto is the newest movie from Netflix starring Kevin Hart and Woody Harrelson. I watched it just last night, and here we are 18 hours later, and I'm still left wondering, is it one of the best spoof movies I've seen in many years, or is it one of the worst movies I've seen this year? Let's talk about why. So the movie is a comedy, I think it's supposed to be a comedy. It plays off like it's an action movie at the beginning, but of course Kevin Hart is in there, and Kevin Hart is a very good comedian, very good comic timing, and very much holds this movie together in certain aspects. He's definitely the best performer across the movie. So Kevin Hart is playing a down on his luck husband who just can't get a break with his job or anything he's trying to create. And I guess he's in a bad relationship, or his relationship's going bad, but there's no indication of that early on, and we'll get into that part later on because it's very confusing within the movie. But basically the story is one of a person who gets confused for someone else and then has to take up their life in order to help them achieve their mission. And the reason I thought this movie was something of a spoof as I was watching it is because, number one, it's got some of the worst dialogue in any movie you'll see. It's one of the worst written movies I've seen in a long time. There's big plot holes throughout the movie, and there's stuff you would only see in the likes of Naked Gun, although not to that level, because Naked Gun is an iconic movie. Leslie Nielsen will always be the master of those type of spoof movies.
Nice beaver.
Thank you. I just had it stuffed.
Let me help you with that.
But I thought maybe they were going for something in that sort of vein, just not to that level. And I've said many times with these movies, if you're going to go over the top, you've really got to go over the top with the action. That's what makes Naked Gun so good and Airplane so good. But if you half-arse it like this movie does, where it's kind of serious at times and kind of jokey at times, you just end up with a mishmash of nothingness. It's a good explanation of what this whole movie is. So you've got the core story where there's this man from Toronto who's this hitman who goes around and extracts information from people. The police want to catch him. They set up a sting operation, but Kevin Hart is trying to take his wife to a resort for her birthday. He's booked a cabin and they're going to go to the cabin. He drops his wife off to a day spa while he goes checks out the cabin. But of course the cabin, it just happens to be the wrong cabin. He turns up to the wrong cabin and he gets confused for Woody Harrelson's character, who is the man from Toronto. So Kevin Hart has to play along and pretend to be the man from Toronto. The FBI burst in, and then Kevin Hart is told, these guys now think you are the man from Toronto, so you have to be the man from Toronto. That part's all fine. It's a setup. It's a fairly basic setup, but Kevin Hart plays it off relatively well. He brings his own brand of comedy in there, and he's a master comedian. He's got very good comedic timing, and he always elevates projects he's in my opinion. But then we get to the point where Kevin Hart is on an airplane with all these guys who think he's the man from Toronto. They're flying to Puerto Rico for Kevin Hart to do the second part of the mission. Aboard the plane, Woody Harrelson pops up, explains to the guys that he's the man from Toronto, not Kevin Hart. They have this comedic back and forth between the two of them. And out of nowhere, Woody Harrelson ends up fighting everybody on the plane, which, okay, it's a bit random, it's a bit wild. But up to this point, Woody Harrelson has been playing it very serious. He's been playing it like a stern, tough guy. He hasn't been playing it like a comedic role at all to this point. So the long and the short of it, Woody Harrelson, despite coming in and being angry at Kevin Hart for pretending to be him, kicks the shit out of everybody on the plane, kills everybody on the plane, except for Kevin Hart. Later on, they do clarify why he kept them alive, but at the time when I was watching it, I remember thinking, why doesn't he kill Kevin Hart as well as the other guys? He's no reason to keep him alive. But they come up with one later on. Now, of course, Woody Harrelson is playing the man from Toronto, a hitman who also has a handler, like they all do in all these movies. And one thing I've found with hitman movies down the years across the genre is that 9 times out of 10, when a hitman has a handler or someone that helps him out at the beginning or a mentor, usually that handler or mentor is the one who turns on them at some point in the movie. So guess what happens in this movie? But we get to a point now where Kevin Hart and Woody Harrelson have to work together. Woody Harrelson eventually reveals the reason he kept Kevin Hart alive is because all these bad guys think that Kevin Hart is the man from Toronto. So Woody Harrelson is going to allow him to pretend to be the man from Toronto to get him in the door, despite Woody Harrelson being this badass hitman who was torturing people at the start of the movie, could just burst in there, take what he wants anyway. Now, while all this is happening, Kevin Hart's wife was dropped off at the spa, don't forget, at the beginning. The FBI helped Kevin Hart's character cover up what's happening by sending Kevin Hart's wife on a shopping spree on a trip to Washington with her best friend. They've got this bodyguard, and she's none the wiser to what Kevin Hart's doing. She thinks he's doing a business proposal thing. And they plan a special birthday dinner, which Kevin Hart's going to turn up to later on. Now, I mentioned the relationship between Kevin Hart and his wife in the movie. All the way along, every scene up to this point, they've been quite jovial. They haven't said a bad word between them. There's been no animosity between them. No indication that they have a bad relationship or there's any ill feeling between either of them. In fact, at one point when Kevin Hart calls her to ask her how her day is going, she says he's knocked it out of the park for her birthday. It's her best birthday ever, something to that effect. And it all seems sunshine and roses. That is until we get to the dinner scene later on, where Kevin Hart turns up to the dinner with Woody Harrelson. Kaley Cuoco pops up at this point as well, who we know from Big Bang Theory and all the other TV shows she's done. It's quite strange seeing her in such a small role. She's the best friend of Kevin Hart's wife in the lineup. She's basically the fourth of the 4 people there. It's quite a small role for her. I was quite surprised to see such a small role for the star of Hop. You know, that great movie. Although according to some Hollywood experts, that would put her on the same pay scale as Jason Momoa and Johnny Depp, Gal Gadot. But everything's sunshine and roses. They're having fun on a date. Woody Harrelson has interaction with Kaley Cuoco. They're getting on pretty well. Kevin Hart and his wife are having a good time, laughing and joking together. And all of a sudden, the man from Miami comes in. Because apparently there's a different hitman in every town or city in the world. Some stupid bollocks like that. But he's popped up previously. We've had interactions with him. In fact, we had one where Woody Harrelson knocked him out on the ground. And they just cut away. They didn't capture him. They didn't kill him. They didn't do anything to stop him coming after them again. They just cut away and he comes back after them again later on. But when the man from Miami turns up in the restaurant, Kevin Hart and Woody Harrelson have to leave, leaving Kevin Hart's wife behind. But again, at no point do they show her being angry. Or in fact, at no point do they show her up until the very end. But Kevin Hart, when it's all said and done, when he saved the world, goes back to the restaurant and he finds an empty restaurant. Well, surely he'd know the restaurant would be closed. He could just ring his wife, go to her hotel, talk to her. But instead he does a sad walk down the street. And the next time we see him, he's sad walking into his house. And then when we see inside the house, all of his wife's clothing is gone. And he has a voicemail saying, I don't know who you are, and I don't know who you've become, something to that effect, you lied to me, this type of thing. Basically his wife is up and left, despite the fact we've seen no animosity between the couple, or any signs they were in an unhappy marriage or that she was unhappy. They didn't show that at all in the movie. She just decides to leave at this point, randomly. But Kevin Hart has a second chance because she's going for a train to her mother's house. And he has to get to the train station before she leaves. And after some more fights and more men from different cities popping up, Kevin Hart gets to the train station and his wife seems very happy to see him. Shows no animosity yet again, isn't upset at all. Sees blood on his shirt, is concerned by that, but she's actually quite happy to see him. So at no point in the movie, not even at the end for the final confrontation between the couple, do we see any anger or sadness from the wife who has attempted to leave the husband. It's quite a strange arc, quite a strange side story within the whole movie. But like I mentioned with that part of the story, it seems certain parts are just missing. Or like when I mentioned the man from Miami. When they first encounter the man from Miami and they fight him and Woody Harrelson knocks him out on the floor and they skip to the next scene and the man from Miami is just gone. That happens many times throughout the movie where something is happening and then they just cut to a completely different scene. And Woody Harrelson's character keeps jumping from serious to comedic to a little bit forlorn at certain points. There's a lot of hit and miss jokes in there, but as I mentioned earlier, Kevin Hart is a master comedian. And some of the jokes work in the movie because Kevin Hart makes them work. Sound like a real Kevin Hart fanboy right here, aren't I? I was laughing at certain points in the movie. A lot of the movie was very generic. It's stuff we've seen multiple times. As I said, the writing was horrendous. There's big points just missing. Some terrible dialogue in there. The whole thing with his wife never actually being shown as sad, despite her wanting to leave her husband by the end of the movie. The whole build-up of the other men from other cities, and they're kind of comedic, but not quite over-the-top comedic. They were kind of half-assing it. They're both a little bit tough guy and a little bit comedic, and they never really swing one way or the other. But the movie does have some interesting scenes. I think the fight scene in the gym looked quite visually interesting. It looked very free cam. They just moved around, tried to time it, and it looked pretty interesting. At the same time, there is the wild factor of this big, burly, crazy man swinging a chainsaw inside a gym. Yeah, it was kind of an attempt at over-the-top comedy, but they never really went for it in the movie. But possibly this could be a movie that splits opinions, because from a technical standpoint, there's nothing spectacular in it. From a critical standpoint, I think critics will shit all over this movie. But I wouldn't be surprised if people out there did enjoy it, because as I mentioned, Kevin Hart is in there, and there are certain points within the movie where I did find myself laughing out loud. So I'd love to know your opinion on The Man from Toronto. If you've seen it, let me know in the comment section below. But of course, we've got to give it a rating out of 10. Out of 10 for The Man from Toronto. As I mentioned, it had a lot more bad than good, and for that reason, I'll give it a 3 out of 10. So in the end, The Man from Ireland tells you don't waste your time on this pretty damn poor movie.